All right, welcome into another Insider Notebook here at Bleacher Report. I am James Palmer with you once again at noon Eastern on a Wednesday. We're going to go through a lot of quarterback talk, some injuries, some new guys starting. We're going to go through this entire slate that's on the side here. We will also, remember, always be answering your chats as I get myself into the chat, which has just gone away. And when we're back, you can always hit me up. As many things you want in here. Talk about your fantasy team. Talk about who you think's going to win on Sunday. Whatever you'd like. By the way, speaking of fantasy, Ceedee Lamb dropping that ball at the goal line. If he would have caught that and Aubrey gets the extra point, I win by a point, but I lose because he dropped the ball at the goal line. Bummer. I'm not still bitter. We're going to go through some coaches' decisions. Speaking of Ceedee Lamb and George Pickens, and also with Keon Coleman, what that means for some receivers and kind of how that goes within the building. Maybe give a little inside information there. Jamar Chase and his suspension. It was upheld. What essentially went down? What's kind of the situation moving forward? I'll also give you the money that he ended up losing, which is a lot. Chiefs Colts. This is a massive game. Just absolutely massive game. The Chiefs are teetering on maybe not making the postseason. What an insane thing to say after 8 straight years of going to the AFC Championship game. There is a chance that happens. I'll tell you why this is such a big game and the matchup that you need to watch, talking to people around the league. Also, A.J. Brown. He got his targets. The Eagles got the win. Offense still doesn't really look the way we want it to look. We'll break that down as well. Let's start at the top here. We talk about Shedeur Sanders. Let's talk about the fifth round pick making his first NFL start. Let's go. Everybody's been clamoring for it. And he will. Dillon Gabriel is in the concussion protocol. Shedeur Sanders will get the start. He will get all the first team reps this week. I know that's been a big topic of discussion for a lot of people. To clarify, backup quarterbacks do not get first team reps ever. I had a long conversation with Chase Daniel about this on Monday. Chase, if you remember, was a 14-year NFL veteran, 14 years as an NFL backup, and really broke down the way practice goes for me. I feel like I'm on a soapbox, but I feel like it has to be said. As the backup quarterback, you run the opposing team's offense. That's what Shedeur has been doing. So understandable that he looks cold in his first NFL action. He goes out there and goes 4 for 16 for 47 yards, an interception, 2 sacks for a grand total of 27 negative yards. We saw a lot of his old habits in that game against Baltimore where he drops too far in the pocket. These are what teams have told me, where he holds onto the football too long, which is what teams have told me. And he didn't think he played that well either. I'm trying to set the stage for it. That's a difficult situation to go into. You've never played in the NFL. You've never taken an NFL snap. And your first snap is coming in cold as you've spent the entire week being Lamar Jackson in practice, which is what his role was for the course of the week. Now, again, that is what happens in every building. The Browns are not sabotaging Shedeur Sanders by any stretch. They would love for him to be successful. Finding a quarterback in the fifth round is unbelievable amounts of currency. What the Browns actually did to try to prepare and develop Shedeur as much as they possibly can and get him ready for what is Sunday, his first NFL start, was they have actually added periods to practice, added things after practice. I believe it's called Hungry Dog, since they're the Browns and the Dog Pound, where players like Shedeur Sanders get an opportunity, and this happens with a lot of backup quarterbacks that put the work in, to go through the script, to go through certain individual plays with maybe the assistant quarterback coach or maybe some practice squad guys and throw to some guys to try to get that work in. The Browns have actually done the opposite of what everybody's accusing them of. They've added reps for Shedeur Sanders because of the situation they're in with both rookie quarterbacks being in their quarterback room to try to develop him. Now, my understanding is, talking to people there, they have really liked the development that Shedeur has gone through. Has it been up and down? Certainly. Have they seen developments? 100%. And they did know that there were supposed to be developments this season. There were people in that building that were hoping, not rooting against him, but hoping that he would have an entire redshirt season to develop and be more prepared going into his sophomore year to compete maybe for the starting job or just overall be a better quarterback. But now we get a chance to see Shedeur Sanders go out there with an entire week of practice. The game plan will be completely set up to his strengths, which is a conversation that he will have with Kevin Stefanski and Tommy Rees to make sure that everything is where it wants to be, designed specifically for Shedeur, and we get a chance to really get a better evaluation, to be completely honest, than we got when he came in cold after Dillon Gabriel suffers a concussion against Baltimore. So it's going to be really interesting to go see what ends up happening, and see where he goes from here. And people have an opportunity to evaluate both their quarterbacks there in the Cleveland Browns building, as they too have two first round picks in 2026. Now to, I think, even bigger news, far bigger news at the quarterback position. but I was maybe overruled. Michael Penix Jr. ends up getting confirmed what I think I broke on Monday morning, but I don't know why more people didn't pay attention. A partially torn ACL in the left knee. It's the same knee that he had the bone bruise and the sprain on earlier this year, where he missed a week. The other knee is where he's had 2 ACL reconstructions. He is going to need an ACL reconstruction with this. He went and got a second opinion that confirmed what the first opinion was, and now Michael Penix Sr., Michael Penix Jr. season is over, and it was kind of an up and down year. It's something that you didn't want to obviously have happen. He now has 5 seasons that have been cut short out of his 8, including college, due to season-ending injuries. There was now been 3 knee injuries and 2 shoulder injuries. 2 of them happened in college with the knee, 2 of them happened with the shoulder in college, and now this one in his second NFL season. It was a complicated year. There were some things they thought they really, really liked the way he played offensive football and ran this team. They think he sees everything. They think his vision is absolutely outstanding. He has a great arm. Are there times where he maybe, is a tick late with his footwork or his eyes or his arms? Certainly that happens every so often, where there's certain throws that he was maybe a little bit limited in, of course, but they did feel like there was some growth. They had really high hopes when I talked to people in Atlanta for this season. It just didn't really go the way that they wanted it to go. The defense took a major step, but on the offensive side, with all those weapons, whether it's Bijan Robinson or Kyle Pitts or Drake London, individually, some of those guys having some really, really good seasons in terms of stats, but the offense as a whole not really fully coming together, with Penix leading the charge there. And they do believe, like, he's almost too much of a perfectionist, I'm told. Like, he wants everything to be perfect. And sometimes you just got to go out there and play, put a little touch on the ball, get it to where it needs to go. But they still have high hopes, but he's going to be really, really butted up against the start of the season to when he could be cleared to come back and play from this. So we'll see what Kirk Cousins' future is. Kirk Cousins is going to be the starter for the rest of the year. Also, big name I mentioned, Drake London. They're hoping, if he can play in week 13 with the knee issue he's dealing with. It's a PCL. We'll see if he can go. I think that's wishful thinking right now on a Wednesday. I'll get to Rodgers really, really quickly, then I'll get to some of these chats that you guys have in here. Aaron Rodgers has a fracture in his left wrist. He is going to try to play. He is pushing to play. The Pittsburgh Steelers, to my understanding, have not ruled him out. He's not going to practice today. He's most likely probably not going to practice Thursday. Friday is the big day that's circled in the Steelers' eyes to see if he can go out there and do some things. They're trying to figure out what type of brace he could wear on that wrist. Is he going to be able to function with that brace? Is he going to be able to take snaps under center? How is the mobility? Can he grip a football? All these things they're going to want to have answered towards the end of the week. And they're comfortable doing it that way because of the veteran he is, because he's played football for an eternity and he's 41 years old, that he can really go the week in Mike Tomlin's eyes and not really practice and be able to play in this game. So this is something we're going to continue to evaluate. No decisions are being made on this Wednesday. Later in the week is when they're going to have more of a decision to make. Really just they're going to find out if he can protect himself, if it can be played with a brace, what type of brace that is. If he goes down, will it further, be injured? Those are all the things they're looking at. And I think Friday out at practice a little bit is when that's going to be kind of determined. If he can't go, it will be Mason Rudolph, who performed pretty well in relief against Cincinnati. I looked at the numbers, 12 of 16 for 127 and a touchdown. He would be the guy that would get the start, as Pittsburgh is trying their best at 6-4 to hold on to that division as the Ravens come creeping up behind them. All right, before we move on to some of these coaches' decisions, what do we have in here? Unfortunate for Penix, he showed some promise at times, certainly did. Seems like you just don't like Shedeur Sanders or even want to see him have an opportunity. I'm totally fine with him having an opportunity. I think the coverage of his NFL career has been skewed, probably inappropriately in a lot of ways, and I don't think it's really helped Shedeur Sanders, to be entirely honest. I think he's a fifth-round pick that needs to get better and learn the NFL game, which is what the Browns want him to be, but I think this is just what comes with Shedeur Sanders. It's part of it. I ask you this every week, but can you explain Bryce Young and the Panthers? Hey, I'll say that. Bryce Young goes out and throws for a Panthers record 448 yards this past week. beats Cam Newton's career high. It's a franchise record, and he was throwing the ball downfield. We've been waiting. I think this team's been getting better, right? Like they're in the playoff hunt. They don't have a great chance, but I think playing some meaningful games as we approach here into December is great for this Panthers team. They have a really tough sled the rest of the way out. I think they still have the Rams, the Seahawks, the Niners. I think those are on their schedule coming up here, but Niners this week. I think it was promising to see them take some shots downfield. T-Mac has been outstanding. He's been such a large focal point for Bryce, though. I was having a conversation with Steve Smith about this yesterday because obviously Steve's a Panthers legend, knows everything about that team. And he said what we're going to hopefully start to see from T-Mac, and I thought this was a great observation. He's been outstanding. He's like a top 5 receiver in yards and all these things. Now, as a number one and all the attention you're getting, how do you play the receiver position to free up some other things for guys like Jalen Coker or Xavier Legette, or find ways to get to kind of draw attention or cloud cover this way, and you see Rico Dowdle get a screen in the opposite direction. He said that's the next part T-Mac needs to do to help this offense is now start to use the attention he's getting to free up some of these other guys. I think Bryce going downfield was something that they needed to do. It's been a struggle before this game to get anything really going over 20 yards. They've run the ball so well. Teams have been stacking the boxes. Now you got to try to find a way to make them pay for it. They did it this past week. I think Bryce needs a great run game if you ask people around the league to be successful, but that's kind of where it stands right now. What do we got here? Let Rodgers sit this week and recover. Don't rush it. There's some people probably thinking this is a huge Shedeur opportunity. He will have to show up and show out. Now it's time to shine. Yeah, let's give him the opportunity. I'm excited to see that. The Falcons can't seem to catch a break. Penix and London go down in the same week. And Dusty Cousins comes in. That's really, really tough. It's been a tough year for sure for the Falcons when they had some high hopes for what they were going to be able to do. All right, let's go to some of these coaches' decisions. You saw first with George Pickens and Ceedee Lamb. We don't see them out there for the very first series against the Raiders. I'm going crazy because I got Lamb on my fantasy team, like I mentioned. But they come back in after that first series. Jerry kind of shed some light on this, kind of the first one to do it. Not much was said post-game. Lamb didn't really comment on post-game. George Pickens essentially kind of lied post-game about what went on, talking about formations and personnel was the reason. Jerry flat out said it on his radio appearance on 105.3. The Fan, saying more or less it had to do with meeting discipline and had a late problem there, essentially late to a meeting. And this is something that is not, when I talk to people in Dallas, something that ever happens with Ceedee Lamb. He is considered one of the hardest workers in that entire building. He has a reputation for just never being late, working his tail off, doing everything right, and he's one of the best receivers in football. George has had a bit of an issue being late to some things during the course of his time with the Cowboys, which has not even been that long, 11 games. But they were late, and so they were penalized by, not playing in that first drive. I always find it kind of funny. Hey, we're not going to play you for the first drive. I guess we're embarrassing you, so everybody talks about you, but we do need you, so we need you for the rest of the game. And what happened the rest of the game is they both balled out. Keon Coleman's situation was a little bit different. He ends up getting benched for the duration of the game. Doesn't even dress. He's a healthy scratch after being late for a meeting on Friday. And that's difficult on a team. When you're the ex-receiver and you're the guy that's playing on the boundary and you've gone through the whole week of preparation and you get subbed out on a Friday, and you're not going to play, that changes the course of your team's game plan. We all know that Sean McDermott has been known as a disciplinarian. We see that in this. He didn't sugarcoat really anything after the game. Keon Coleman, without him off the field, this offense actually, honestly, really came alive. I'm not saying they're directly correlated, but they didn't miss a beat with Coleman off the field. And to me, that makes me start looking at where they're at. When you've had discipline issues, you've had performance issues, you've had some effort issues, you've had all of those things. Does his role start to change? They bring in Gabe Davis, who has a tremendous relationship with Josh Allen. They've had some injuries at the wide receiver spot leading into this Thursday game with some guys that are ruled out. I think Mecole Hardman's out, Curtis Samuel's out, Khalil Shakir's fine. Different position in the slot. But we'll see if his snaps change. I think that's something to really keep an eye on Thursday, as they've been a little disappointed with the way Keon Coleman has gone in this sophomore season. Before I get to Jamar Chase, is there anything in this here chat that anybody's interested in? Expectations will be unreasonable for Shedeur this week. He's been ignored for most of the season, and now if they don't win, he'll be labeled a bust. I think expectations will be very interesting to watch in whatever direction whoever's stating them likes to shift it to. Is it Tyrod's job to keep, or does Fields have a chance to reclaim the starting job? I think I think things would have to dramatically go poorly for Taylor for Justin to get another opportunity to come back in there. It's a pretty big sample size for the way he's played this year, which is a shame. He's an outstanding human being. I thought it was going to change a little bit this year for him with being told he's the guy, but it just didn't really fall that way. All right, to Jamar Chase and Spitgate 2.0 for the season, by the way. We had a spitting incident with Jalen Carter onto Dak Prescott before the game started in week 1. Then we had this one with Jamar Chase spitting on Jalen Ramsey. This is such a weird topic to say. Men spitting on each other is just absolutely gross. But the way the suspensions go, just kind of wanted to clear this up. Jalen Carter's happened before the first snap of the game. So him getting ejected before the first snap, essentially that full game was his suspension. So he was able to play in week 2. Because this happened in game, that Jamar Chase's 1-game suspension happens next week, this coming week, essentially, against the Patriots. What ended up happening is they were kind of going at it through the course of the game. You saw a really vicious hit from Jalen Ramsey on Jamar Chase from behind. Ramsey claimed that Chase stole his mouthpiece at one point during the game, which he was also accused of doing against Minkah Fitzpatrick before in his past. I've talked to some former receivers this week, just kind of asking them what this goes on, and they said it happens. Towels get taken, mouthpieces get taken, you kind of throw it, you just kind of mess with the guy to get in his head. These things happen between DBs and corners, but it kind of escalated, obviously, with a guy that talks a lot of trash in Jalen Ramsey. I mean, a lot, and he loves to. But when the spit happened, obviously, he lost it, and Mike Tomlin had his back in the press conference. And more or less said you can kind of do what you want if another man spits on you, which is the way Mike T was handling it for his team. So the repercussions is the 1-game suspension. It was appealed by Jamar Chase, and his appeal was this. I'm not lying. If I was going to spit in the face of Jalen Ramsey, I would have spit directly in his face, not like on his jersey or towards the ground. I would have done it there, not there. So I wasn't intentionally doing it. That did not work. The 1-game suspension is upheld. So financially, what ends up happening? I asked Copilot that exact question. How much was Jamar Chase fined for his recent suspension? The suspension is going to cost Jamar Chase his weekly paycheck of $448,333, along with a $58,823 active bonus that he also forfeits. So a grand total of $507,156 for that loogie. That is an expensive spit right there from Jamar Chase. I would say this. I think what Zach Taylor said, this week in his press conference is I think the right way to go about it. He said there is too much of a track record of Jamar Chase in their building and the person he is and what he's done to allow one mistake to kind of change his entire perception of his wide receiver. I've spoken to people that have talked to Jamar this week, and they said kind of the similar thing, that this was out of character for him, surprising for them, but you can't judge a man on one exact thing, even though it was gross. That's kind of the thought process from the Bengals. All right, what else do we have? Jamar Chase got lucky for only a 1-game suspension for spitting on a man, which is totally gross. I just said that too, which I find it just really gross. Chase is a low-key dirty player, but Ramsey talks a lot. I got more trash talking than trash compactor. Ramsey never stops talking in a game, and I don't know if you guys know Jalen. He really, really never stops talking. Keon Coleman, in all honesty, has been a bust. They have no downfield threat consistently on top of what they have dropping balls left and right, and now all of a sudden the offense takes off when he's out. Not good at all. That's a bad look, honestly, for a guy looking to get a role. I agree with you there. Who is a better matchup this week? George versus Jax, or what's the low? Aussie Bus. Let's say Dortch. Man, you're playing low down in the fantasy world. Bears fans, I concur. Let him heal up for the playoff push. I love it. All right, let's get to the Chiefs. Because this is a fascinating game, and I want to throw some things out there. You guys know I work at the Athletic as well. We have an unbelievable playoff simulator there on the site, and so you can manipulate it however you'd like, and then go through the weeks and see how the percentages change. Right now, the Chiefs have a 56% chance of making the playoffs. If they lose to the Colts this week, their chance of just making the postseason drops to 36%. Really just kind of like a 1 in 3. from here on out, if they lose this game, that they're going to get into the postseason. The Broncos have a commanding lead in the division. They're going to most likely lose the AFC West for the first time in Patrick Mahomes' career. 2015 was the last time they didn't win it, and that was Peyton Manning and the Broncos who won the AFC West. It would be staggering to see this Chiefs team go from the AFC Championship game every single year of Patrick Mahomes' career to not making the postseason this year. The funny part is, my buddy Mike Sando over at The Athletic broke this down, their EPA in almost everything offensively is identical, maybe even a little bit better than it was a year ago. But the biggest swing in all of this, they were 11-0 if you include the playoffs, 12-0 in one-score games. This year, 0-5 in one-score games. I was at that game against the Broncos this past weekend. I just think that fear factor late in games against the Chiefs is kind of gone across the NFL a little bit. They just feel a little bit more vulnerable, and the perception of them in other teams' eyes, which has always been one thing. If it's close and it's late, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs will find a way. That doesn't seem to be the vibe with teams when they face them. I'm looking at one main matchup here. And I think this is the one that we love watching. Lou Anarumo, the defensive coordinator now in his first year with the Indianapolis Colts, going against Patrick Mahomes. Remember those battles? I was on the sideline for all of them between Cincinnati with Joe Burrow and company and Lou Anarumo running that defense against Patrick Mahomes. He had an experienced secondary. He was called the mad scientist. I remember when Von Bell told me that in preparation of one of those AFC Championship games, in the way that he can confuse and mix things up. We'll see if Ward can come back. It's not fully ruled out yet. But with Sauce Gardner and two corners, if he has them, and this is for the Colts moving forward, very dangerous defense to move things around and do different things. Lou kind of is the one in that building that knows what it takes to beat the Chiefs. And he kind of said it this week, and we'll see what can happen. This is what the Broncos did. You hold them to field goals. The Denver has one of the best red zone defenses in football, so that helped. But you got to hold them to field goals. You got to make sure you win the turnover battle, which is so hard against the Chiefs, specifically late in games. They don't turn the ball over a whole lot late in games. And you got to make sure that you can keep up with the speed that they have. And so that is the battle to watch between those two. Patrick Mahomes and the speed that he has at all of his receivers. And can Lou Anarumo's team confuse him? Without DeForest Buckner, it's harder. Certainly the rest of the way out for Indianapolis. But can they make sure they have a plan on Rashee Rice? I would say this. My understanding is Indianapolis's plan is focused on Rice. In terms of how Kansas City uses different ways to get him the football, finds different kind of like horizontal ways to get him the football, all these different things. What does Lou Anarumo do? This is why they wanted to hire him, to make sure that this defense can perform better in big games across the AFC. The Colts, we know, have a really balanced offense. It's been a really, really good offense. What I also have my eye on in this other way, before we go to A.J. Brown, Chris Jones at 31 years old is playing more snaps than he's ever played in his career. And that's just staggering. The depth is the issue here with Kansas City. They used to be able to rotate these big D tackles in and give Chris a breather so he can be impactful on third downs, impactful in game-changing situations, and get after the quarterback. It's been tougher for him to do that. He played great against the Broncos, but tougher for him to do that in key moments when he's playing more snaps than he's ever played per game. And he's older, obviously, than he's ever been in his NFL career, because I guess each year you are older than the year before in the league. And that's something to keep an eye on as well up front, because we know the way this Colts offense can wear teams down. So I can't stress it enough, the magnitude of this game for the Kansas City Chiefs, and honestly the rest of the AFC landscape. Because when I talked to Chiefs players in that locker room last Sunday, it was, we just got to find a way to get in the postseason. Then we know we can make some noise. Because I think if they get in, they're confident, and they'll find a way, no matter what their path will be. They went on the road before, even though everybody said they couldn't do it. And so they know that they can do it. And I think the rest of the AFC just doesn't want them in the postseason. So this is a game that everybody in Kansas City will be watching, and it's huge, huge stakes. But I think the rest of the AFC is watching as well. All right, before we get to some more of this, there's not a lot of chats today. So the Chiefs calling bullcrap with Kelsey, saying this team is better than last year's team, which is crazy, being now that Rice is back. I think there's some metrics to say that this team is actually offensively better than last year, with all the weapons they have. And Travis is actually having a pretty good year this year. It's just in tight moments. You saw Mahomes in that game against the Broncos go out on the field and twice You're like, he's going to come down the field and win this game. He goes 3 and out twice late in the game. Like, you just don't see that from this Chiefs offense. It's, they had their left tackle miss a stretch of games, and they weathered the storm. But maybe getting him back in another game and Josh Simmons, that they're a little bit better. But we'll find out. But it's been really, really, really fascinating to see what's happened with the Kansas City Chiefs this year. Just that margin for error. I'll say this: last year's team, a lot of those games they won. Talking to people in that building, they were like, "We shouldn't have won this game." The game against the Chargers, ball goes off the upright. The game against the Broncos, a guy falls asleep essentially during a game-winning field goal, gets run over, and they block it. Like, just the most bizarre endings. The Raiders, they had the game in hand, the ball gets snapped, and they fumble it when they were just getting ready to set up for their game-winning field goal. So I think some of those wins from a season ago when they went 11-0 in those one-score games, I think the Chiefs even know some of those were fraudulent. Now the pendulum has swung completely back in the other direction. Okay, let's go with any other chats before we get to A.J. Brown. Do you feel like A.J. Brown wants out but just can't say it? The way things are going, when it's time to re-sign him, probably will be out. Let's get to A.J. Brown. I would say this: the narrative talking to people in Philadelphia has dramatically really shifted. It was a lot of people going, A.J. Brown's complaining, A.J. Brown's complaining, but we're winning, he should stop complaining, to A.J. Brown really has a point. A.J. Brown, maybe his method of the way he's saying it, whether it's on Twitch or whether he's streaming or whether he's doing cryptic tweets, which a lot of that is going to stop after a conversation he had with owner Jeffrey Lurie. But a lot of people in Philadelphia are now sitting here going like, no, I think A.J. Brown's right. Like, he's one of the best receivers in football. This offense is better if he gets the ball, and this offense as a whole is not working entirely well. And I think that part of it has been pretty fascinating to watch how it's kind of moved over. What the major issue is, and he ends up having this game where he gets a boatload of targets, but the offense still has some disjointedness to it. I think it's fascinating that Saquon Barkley, after a 2,000-yard season, is 38th in the NFL in yards per carry. 38th. He has been healthy. I know the offensive line has had a couple of injuries, but that's a staggering drop from what he was a season ago. So the offense is essentially built to be a running offense. And then off the play action and the focus you have on the run, you can hit these shots. And A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts have a tremendous rapport of throwing the football down the field usually together. But all of it is just not really working. What the formula is, and some people in Philadelphia are curious if this is the problem, is they're being almost too conservative with the football because they are so turnover adverse. They are 40-2 in Nick Sirianni's career when they win the turnover battle. I think they have the fewest turnovers in the NFL this season. They're really, really good in the red zone, number 1 in the NFL as an offense. So really, it's just like, if we don't turn it over, and we're really good at scoring touchdowns instead of field goals when we get down there, and we have a good kicking game, and our defense is skyrocketing right now, and they're only going to get better with the way they're playing. It's almost like you don't put the ball in a lot of harm's way, and you almost play a little too conservative. Now, my understanding is with all those targets, the game plan didn't change because of what A.J. Brown said. He is the focal point of their passing offense every week. Maybe Jalen Hurts had a little bit in the back of his mind, I should go there more frequently, but it was within the game plan. They're still leading the NFC. They still have the number 1 seed right now. But I think for AJ's future and what's going to happen this offseason, I think it's going to be something that maybe the Eagles evaluate. I'm not saying he's gone or anything, but it's something that I think they're going to all evaluate in Philadelphia as how he looks at what happens this season. But he was never going to get rid of him this year. This is a team that is aspirations to repeat as Super Bowl champs and have a very realistic chance of doing that. So it's been off for sure. They've had far too many negative plays. They've been in 3rd and long consistently. I think they have the worst 3rd and long average in the NFL. And 40% of their drives end in 3 and out. It's hard to get anything going within your passing game with A.J. Brown, or you're in situations where you have to throw the ball on 3rd and long. It's difficult. And so we'll see if it changes. It's another new play caller that they're getting used to. But there's nothing else to A.J. Brown's complaints. I'll be honest there. It almost seems like it's headed in a more positive direction, even though he still is very, very frustrated. All right, what else do we have here before I go? There's not a whole lot of chats today. We got a weak chat. Weak chat, guys. I don't like it. How do you feel about the Dolphins? Is McDaniel's job still on the line? I think line or lime. I think it is, but I think it's more like leaning towards him staying in 2026. If you watch the way that team plays, that roster's not put together very well. Maybe that's why they made a decision to make a move at GM and get rid of Chris Greer midseason, which doesn't happen very often, and Champ Kelly takes over. And you see the way this team plays and plays hard for Mike McDaniel. Like, I don't think he's lost the locker room. I think there was a mistake of being, and he would probably admit this, a little bit more lenient in the beginning of his career, and now he's had to get more firm in how the operation is run during practice and throughout that building. But I think it might be leaning more towards him staying right now. And I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of openings this offseason. There may not be. And they're tied to Tua in 2026. So I could see Mike, who gets a lot out of Tua, to stay in 26, honestly. So who's to blame for the Eagles' struggles, Hurts or Sirianni? That's tough. I mean, again, we have a different play caller every single year in Philadelphia. Yes, there's a ton of talent. Yes, it's disjointed. There's an art to play calling. I think there's a part of that that goes in. I think it is a cumulative effort in the way they put all of this together as an offensive football team. I think Jalen plays football in a little bit of a specific way, and that, oftentimes has to get used to. But they're winning. There's too much talent for them to be playing the way they're playing. There are people I talk to around the league that think they can only win one way. But I think if you look at the Super Bowl, you saw that they can win in a different manner and taking some shots to these guys down the field. I just think the concepts and what they're running could be a little bit different. And that falls essentially on everybody. MVS status, who's number 2 in Pittsburgh? I don't really know. I should check on that, honestly. Do the Eagles revisit OC after this offseason? Maybe. I mean, but is more change what you need? It's so funny. Like, they've had a different offensive coordinator every single year of Jalen Hurts' career. He's had a different OC every single year of his college career. Is more change what you're looking for? You better make sure that the swap is there. And I do think this happened with Kellen Moore. Once you get somebody new in there is a learning curve to playing with Jalen because of the style in which he plays the position. Do you think the Raiders clean house in the front office again this offseason, or what? They're paying like 9 coaching staffs. I wouldn't be shocked. I haven't heard this, so this is just an opinion. I wouldn't be shocked if Pete maybe retired after this year or something. I know he's still really, really happy, still really the same Pete Carroll around the building, that's so positive and engaged and everything. But John Spytek is there for the long haul. I mean, he got a 5-year contract. So the GM is going to be there. This is a long, slow build for essentially that perspective. I'm curious what's going to happen to Pete after this year. Okay. All right. We've gone through all this. I wish there was more people in the chat. But anyway, enjoy your Shedeur Sanders Sunday. Let's all see how he goes and give him a fair shake. And enjoy the rest of your slate of games. That Chiefs-Colts game should be circled in everybody's calendar. So enjoy it.